Imagine finding out your next-door neighbor is none other than your wife's ex. And everyone around you finds out before you do? Yeah, I lived through it. And it was a public nightmare. It was a normal afternoon when I heard the moving truck pull up in front of the building. Nothing out of the ordinary. In our condominium, with people coming and going all the time, moving was routine. But this time, something was different. I just couldn't put my finger on it. I went down to pick up a package at the concierge and caught a glimpse of the new resident. Tall, dark hair, a basic t-shirt, and a slightly suspicious look. He seemed reserved, but with the charm of someone who knows how to stand out. The building manager greeted me, and I took the opportunity to ask, "New move? To which apartment?" He replied casually, "403. You're going to live alone." I smiled, said a warm welcome in my mind, and continued on my way. Apartment 403 was right next to ours. It was only a matter of time before we ran into him in the elevator, in the parking garage, in the lobby. And it started happening more often. Too often, even. The first time I saw him up close was in the elevator. My wife and I were coming back from the market, and he got in. He was polite, smiled, and extended his hand. "Nice to meet you, Daniel. I'm new here." "Nice to meet you, Rodrigo. This building is quiet. You'll like it." My wife, who was usually friendly, became strangely quiet. She looked at him for a second longer than usual, and then lowered her eyes, as if avoiding something. At first, I thought she was just tired. But in the following days, the signs began. Every time we passed Daniel, in the parking garage, in the elevator, even on the balcony, she seemed uncomfortable. Sometimes she withdrew. Other times, she tried to hide it. And there were those moments when she would get lost, staring in the direction of the 403. A silent restlessness. One day, we were on the couch watching TV when she commented out of the blue, "Did you see that the new neighbor seems like a nice guy?" "Yes, I did. He seems calm." "Do you think he's cute?" The question caught me off guard. "Huh, why now?" "Nothing. Just curious." There, for the first time, a flea settled behind my ear. The next day, I noticed that she had dressed up more than usual just to go downstairs and pick up a package. The low-cut blouse, the red lipstick she rarely wore. And guess who was at the door at that moment too? Him. Daniel. I started paying attention. She started to avoid talking about him. If I said, "I found Daniel in the garage," she would just mumble something like, "Oh, okay." She never asked anything, but her eyes seemed too attentive to everything involving the new neighbor. Until one day, everything started to make sense. We were on the balcony and she dropped her phone. When I went to help her pick it up, the screen accidentally lit up. And there, among the notifications, was something that chilled my stomach, a message from Daniel. It wasn't compromising per se, but the tone was strange. "We need to talk." I swallowed hard, but didn't say anything right away. I was on high alert. In the following days, the atmosphere between us cooled. And not because we fought, but because distrust grew like weeds. Her every smile, every step in the hallway, every heavy silence, everything seemed to hide something. And then the unexpected happened. Another neighbor stopped me in the hallway. A gentleman who lives in 404, always attentive to everything. He looked at me, hesitated, and said, "You know this Daniel was your wife's boyfriend, right?" I felt the floor drop. "What do you mean?" "She and he dated for years, before you two. I thought you knew." I didn't know. In that instant, everything fell into place. Her look, the discomfort, the message, the silence. The neighbor from 403 wasn't a stranger. He was her past. And he had come back, to live next door to us. What I didn't yet know was how the entire neighborhood would find out, and in the worst possible way. After the neighbor from 404's revelation, I found myself in a whirlwind. My head was spinning, my chest tight, and no matter how hard I tried to remain calm, something inside me screamed, "How come she never told me this?" I spent that night in silence. As if sensing my change, she became restless, but didn't ask anything. We slept facing each other, distant not only in body, but in soul as well. In the following days, the discomfort became routine. I watched her constantly. Her every gesture seemed charged with hidden meaning. If she dressed up more, was it for him? If she took a long time to come down, was she running into him? If she checked her phone, were they talking? And Daniel? He remained polite, calm, but there was an air of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't invasive, he wasn't blatant, but he didn't avoid it either. When we passed each other in the elevator, he always made a point of greeting them both, but the look between him and my wife said more than any words. There was one day in particular that stuck with me. I was coming home from work early and, as I left the garage, I saw the two of them talking in the hallway. They were close. Not touching, but too close. She had that nervous smile, like someone caught red-handed. When she saw me, she paled. He just nodded, as if nothing had happened. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. Are you going to tell me now, or are you going to wait for me to find out more from others? I asked bluntly. She was silent for a few seconds, long enough to confirm everything. I was going to tell you, but I thought he wasn't going to stay here. I didn't even know he was going to live in this building. And why did you hide it from me? Why didn't you say anything when he showed up? She took a deep breath. Because I was afraid you'd think there was still something between us. But there isn't. We broke up years ago. He hurt me, and I moved on. With you. I wanted to believe. I really did. But it was hard. Even more so because, in the building, the story began to spread. The neighbors, always attentive to everything, were already murmuring in the hallways. In the WhatsApp group, a resident made a subtle joke. The building is like a soap opera, current, and past all on the same floor. Shame set in. Anger too. But worse than all that was the doubt. Because even with her words, something didn't add up. If everything was resolved, why so much hesitation? Why the silence, the looks, the poorly explained encounters? I began to wonder if the problem was her, or if it was me, who wasn't ready to deal with the past that had knocked on the door, literally. And what I didn't know yet was that all that tension was about to explode. Not in a confrontation between us, but at a moment when the truth would be revealed in front of everyone. In such a public and shameful way, the entire building would be shocked. It was a Saturday afternoon, one of those days when the entire building seems to come alive. Children playing on the playground, barbecues taking place in the common area, residents passing each other with plates in hand, laughter and voices echoing through the hallways. We almost never went down to these events, but that day we decided to take a walk. Maybe to show that everything was okay. Or maybe so I could observe more closely. It turns out that when truths need to come out, they find their own way of revealing themselves. And that afternoon, the truth decided to fling open the door to 403, in front of everyone. It all started with an innocent comment from the neighbor in 102, Marcia, known for talking too much without holding back. She approached the circle we were in, took a forkful of the salpicao, and blurted out, without thinking, "Guys, to think that Daniel and Rodrigo's wife were once a couple. The world is too small." Silence. Everyone stopped chewing, smiling, breathing. Even the background music seemed to lower in volume at that moment. I looked around, and curious faces turned toward us. My wife froze. The glass in her hand trembled. And I could only ask, my voice cutting through the air, "What's up?" Marcia, realizing the disaster she had just caused, tried to fix it. "Hey, you didn't know? I thought it was common knowledge. They dated for years, right? They were actually quite famous on social media, that couple, quite intense, let's say." My head was spinning. The truth that had until then been whispered in the hallways was now wide open. There, in the midst of the celebration. In front of neighbors, the building manager, children, even the super. A complete embarrassment. My wife tried to hide it. This was years ago. It's out of touch. It was a mistake from the past. But no one else was listening. Everyone was too busy talking among themselves, whispering, gauging our gestures, looking now at me, now at her, now at 403. Daniel himself, who was on the other side of the grill, was disconcerted. He grabbed a beer, faked a phone call, and discreetly left. But not before casting a glance in our direction. A look that showed someone who knew this wasn't going to end well. At that moment, I couldn't stay. I stood up, looked at her and said, "You lied to me. To everyone." I went back to the apartment, my mind racing. She followed me minutes later, trying to explain herself through tears and excuses. "I didn't lie. I just kept it a secret. I swear I didn't expect him to live here. When he showed up, I panicked. I thought if I told you, you wouldn't trust me anymore." But the truth is, at that point, the trust was already damaged. And the whole building knew it. The worst part wasn't the betrayal, because, as far as I knew, she hadn't actually betrayed me. The worst part was the exposure. The feeling of being the last to know something everyone was already whispering behind your back. Of walking down the hallway and feeling the looks of pity, judgment, and curiosity. In the following days, the comments continued. Some disguised, others not so much. The condo group became a minefield. Some people just can't let go of the past, right? Imagine the atmosphere at their breakfast. Does 403 still have feelings for 402? We became a topic of conversation. The main theme of an unsolicited episode of a real-life soap opera. And, in the midst of it all, the hardest part was facing the question that rang in my mind every day. Does she still have feelings for him? Because one thing was certain, that reunion, that secret, wasn't as buried as she claimed. In the days following the scandal, the apartment was incredibly quiet. What was once routine, laughter in the living room, conversations in the bedroom, even good mornings in the kitchen, became a territory of silence, heavy gazes, and questions that still had no answers. I tried to go on with my life as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed. And it wasn't just because of the neighbors or the comments. It was inside. Her silence hurt more than the whispers in the buildings group. What I didn't know hurt more than everything I'd already been told. Until, one random night, she called me to talk. She said she wanted to clear everything up, once and for all. I accepted, but I went with my heart in my throat. I know I was wrong. Not for having a past with him, but for hiding it from you. And you're right to be hurt, to be suspicious. But let me tell you how it really happened. She took a deep breath and began. She said she met Daniel in college, when she was still very young. She said he was her first love, that kind of intense, impulsive, even unhealthy relationship. They were always on and off, with ugly fights and toxic reconciliations. And that, after years of insisting on an endless cycle, he cheated on her with her best friend. That destroyed me. I promised myself I'd never look at him again. And so she did, for many years. She moved to another city, her life, and it was during this fresh start that we met. When I met you, I was honest about everything, except about him. Because, to me, he was a ghost from the past. Dead. Buried. I never imagined he'd show up again. Much less that he'd come live next door. She assured me she hadn't gotten involved with him. That their hallway encounters were casual, and that, when he recognized her, he tried to reopen conversations that she refused. I only kept quiet because I felt weak. I thought you wouldn't understand. That you'd think I still felt something. But I don't. I swear on everything I love. And in that moment, I believed it. Not because it was easy. Not because everything was resolved. But because her gaze said more than words could ever say. It was a weary, regretful, yet honest gaze. A gaze of someone who knew they'd made a mistake, and wanted to make amends. The truth behind the relationship wasn't about unresolved love. It was about a scar that hadn't healed. A part of her life she never wanted to bring into our story, but which, without warning, knocked on our door. So we decided to put everything on the table. To talk, to feel, to digest. It was a process. We had to relearn how to trust, to converse, to deal with other people's gazes without letting it affect what was between us. Daniel. He moved a few months later. He claimed a job change, but deep down we knew. He realized there was no longer room for us there. Neither for him, nor for the past. The neighborhood, like every neighborhood, over time it forgot. A new scandal broke out, another couple fought, and the focus shifted from us. Life went on. And we stayed. More mature. More attentive. More real. Because sometimes, it's not the past that threatens the present. It's the silence. And when the truth is finally told, even if it hurts, it sets us free.